new series, Song of Solomon. I don't know how you feel about that. Maybe we'll touch that here in just a little bit. But first, I want to tell you about this lady named Victoria. This lady, she's Ukrainian, and I used to work with her. And she wasn't a Christian, but she's one of those people that still had a beautiful marriage. And she would talk about her husband all the time. She would have all these cute stories. She's pretty young, maybe in her mid-40s. And then unfortunately her husband tragically died. It was really sad. She lost him. But she was still one of those ladies that would still say, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. One of those people. And anyway, so like I said, we were working together, and there was one day when we were just walking down the hallway, and she pulls me over, and she's like, "You smell that?" And I was worried because I was like, that's a joke I used to pull on my brother, I was like, man. And she's very feminine, you wouldn't expect that from her. But she was like, "No, seriously, do you smell it?" And we're on the 5th floor of a hospital, it smells like UTIs and dirty diapers, But she was like, "No, it's spring. Spring is the season of love. Spring is the season of young love. It's when flowers blossom and young relationships start budding. It's a beautiful time." But this was, I was still single, so that statement went way over my head. I had no idea what she was talking about. But it is spring, and it is the season of love. And now that I'm married, I understand it. Spring is wonderful. Spring is great. And so there's no better time to study the Song of Solomon than now.
They're worried you're going to knock it down.
I'm worried you're going to knock it down. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, thank you, But anyway, when I talk about these things, right, when I talk about Victoria, you might be able to relate to what she's saying, right? Maybe you find yourself in a young relationship, and you know exactly what those feelings that she was feeling are like. Maybe you know how great that is. Or maybe you're thinking about taking those steps towards that special someone, or maybe you don't, right? Maybe you're in a season of life where you're yearning to be loved, you're yearning to love, but you still get those butterflies just imagining what that would be like. And you're just waiting for the day until it's finally your turn, right? And I've been there, we've all been there. Hang in there, man. I believe in you. You'll get there. But again, for others of you, romance has left a bad taste in your mouth, right? Perhaps you've been betrayed, maybe you've been mistreated in previous relationships. And just the thought of romance brings heartache. You want nothing to do with it. And maybe you vow that you will never want to be married, right? You vow that is just something you will not pursue in your life. But my point is this, right? No matter where you find yourself, none of us here, or here tonight, none of us have a blank canvas when it comes to relationships, right? We've all seen good marriages, bad marriages, and whether we like it or not, that left some kind of imprint on us. All of us have a definition. All of us have an expectation that is rooted in our personal experience of marriage, relationship, and romance. And so when I say relationship or marriage, each one of us, we have a picture that pops up into our mind, right? Again, for better or for worse, but we do. And maybe more than that, maybe more than your personal experience, the culture has had a huge influence on the way you view relationships. It has no doubt shaped the way you view marriage. Maybe you hate it, maybe you see it as a ball and chain, whatever, but the culture definitely has shaped and influenced your thinking. Right? And so again, because of that, right, maybe from the positive side, you have too big of a view of marriage. And maybe you become a hopeless romantic, right? Where marriage, you see marriage as the thing that will be the final cornerstone of your life. That's the thing that will finally bring your life to fulfillment, right? Maybe you have unrealistic expectations. Right? Some of us think that life really only begins after you're married. Right? For others of us, the culture has depicted the perfect relationship simply as an endless array of sexual fulfillment. Right? And so maybe the only reason you want to be married is because you just want an outlet for that sexual tension that you feel. And that's sad, if that's all marriage is to you. Right? The world, it loves to engorge itself with inappropriate storylines and sex scenes. Right? We know this. And so as a result, we have been spoon-fed a very perverted, a very twisted idea of what physical intimacy means in marriage. But when it comes to the church, sometimes I think church actually sits on the other side of the spectrum, right? If the culture just overdoes it, maybe the church underdoes it, right? We don't appreciate eros love enough. We don't appreciate romantic love enough, right? It seems like we, the church, sometimes grossly undervalue the privilege of marriage. And so again, there's a danger of prescribing too little value, right? If we just, again, portray it as this ball and chain, your life is changed forever, there's nothing good about marriage, you just work and there's nothing else, that's a very low view of marriage, and we don't want to portray that at all. And so there is a sense in which we should be talking about this, right? After all, this is one of the biggest decisions that you will ever make. And chances are, statistically, most of you will make this decision, I don't know who the youngest person is, who the oldest person here is, but right, probably within the next 2 to 6 years, let's say, most of you will at least somehow have crossed this path of relationships. In 2 to 6 years, most of you will find yourself in a relationship. Maybe it won't work out, maybe it will, but you're going to be there. Just a matter of time. And so again, right, I think one of the things is we shouldn't just be expected to figure it out, right? I mean, especially at like 19, 20, 21 years old, I don't know when people get married usually, but that's asking a lot from a 19-year-old, right? This is a decision that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And so we have to come face to face with the fact that our sexuality, it is a part of us. It's an aspect of life. As a matter of fact, it's a key aspect of your existence. It's a huge part of life. It's not a part that you can just ignore. It's not a part that you can just shut down. And again, I actually want you to think about this. What does Scripture have to say about sexuality, right? When God created Adam and Eve, He created the man, He created the woman, He gave them the gift of sexuality. And with that came physical intimacy, and with that came romance. Right? And those three things, they're intertwined. You can't untie them. Right? In Genesis 1:31, He created man, He created the woman, and He said, it's not good, it's very good. And listen, we should be thankful for that, right? The fact that God created us the way that He did, because He could have created us like the birds, right? Where we just lay some eggs, and they hatch in some time, and that's it. There's no romance. Romance is not a key aspect of life. Like, it doesn't need to be a part of the equation. But God gave it to us as a gift. And so this gift that God gave us is called eros love, right? That's the Greek word for passionate, romantic love. This is the kind of love that allows you to, just imagine, look into the eyes of the one that you love and say, you are altogether lovely, my dear. There is no blemish in you whatsoever. That's a great line. That's a great thing to say. That's a great experience to have in this life. And I want you to have that. I want you to have that, and I want you to be able to say that. I want you to be able to find true love. But if you want that too, then there are some things you need to know. There are some things that you need to become, and there are some things that you will need to do. And so because of all this, what it really comes down to is, if the church, if we don't talk about these things, if we don't define these terms, the terms of romance, sexuality, and marriage, the culture will do it for us. The culture already probably did do it to a certain degree, but now we have to undo some of that muck that we've ingested throughout all these years. And so again, like we've already said, if you think too much of marriage, that's not a biblical definition. If you think too little of marriage, also not a biblical definition. And so we know that God has gone out of His way to define these terms. And nowhere did God do it clearer than in the Song of Solomon. Nowhere. I mean, this is one of the spiciest books in the entire scripture. That is a fact. Nowhere is this stuff more clear, more descriptive. And that's exactly why we're talking about this masterpiece. And it is that. It's a masterpiece. You may not understand its value yet, but you will. You just wait. You just wait. All right, so that was a little short intro. Let's talk a little bit about the book itself. And again, right, I'm a married man, and still, as I read some of these passages, man, I still smile, right? And I know you will too. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm here for it, right? We all are. So a natural question that can arise, right, with a book as spicy as this is, should I be reading this? Is this appropriate? Isn't this for married people, right? Should I be okay with this? And honestly, I just want to say, if you ask yourself that question, I commend you. That's great. That's because you have a filter in your mind, and there are some things that you allow into your mind, other things that you don't. That's wonderful. If you have asked yourself that question, that's a good question to have. So let's address that. And to help us address this concern, let's maybe take a look at what the people of God have historically done with this book. Right? Historically, in Jewish culture, you were required to receive permission to read this book, right? It wasn't just laying around for anybody to see. You needed permission. And as a matter of fact, it was seen as a grand privilege, right? People were waiting to finally be able to read these words. And it was read with great anticipation, with a lot of excitement. Typically, it was between the ages of 16 to 18. I think girls got their hands on it first, and then the guys did. But before you would be granted the right to read this book, there were some prerequisites. You had to have books of the Bible memorized, right? Why do you think they did that? It's because it requires maturity, right? It's not just for some immature teenager. This is some serious stuff. And so by showing, maybe proving yourself, right, you show yourself as a man that can handle this kind of content. And gentlemen, wow, we are actually separated almost perfectly, girls and guys. So gentlemen, I do want to have your attention. The only guy standing. The only guy. Wow. What? Tell you no. But gentlemen, I do want to get your attention for a moment.
What?
I want you to know that there have been concerns that have arisen throughout these last few months. Concerns that maybe some of the guys are not yet mature enough for this kind of content. And I'm afraid that some of those concerns are justified. Maybe some of those arguments have merit to them. And I want you to know that this book will talk about love, attraction, romance, and yes, physical intimacy. But it's not brought up, physical intimacy is not brought up as something to laugh about here. It's not something to be crude about. Rather, it's brought up as something to cherish. Right? That's one of the most beautiful parts of this book. You see what kind of carefulness a man should approach a woman, and especially other things as well. Right? Romance is something that requires carefulness, thoughtfulness. And that requires character, patience. And so again, these are things that we're not born with, right? You're not just born mature, you're not born patient. That's something you have to learn, especially if you want to step into marriage. If you want to become ready for marriage, you have to learn these things. You have to grow in these things. And that's why we decided it's not only appropriate, but it's necessary. This book is necessary for you, for all of us. But gentlemen, again, please, right? Be careful. Don't make any of the girls uncomfortable with any jokes afterwards. Be responsible. Be mature about this. And then I have another warning for you as well. Last time we studied this book, which was a couple years ago, it was in the form of a video series. I just feel like I should warn you, right? The last time we went through this content, we broke the church's record for the amount of marriages in a year, right? And I was one of those guys. And I'd be lying if I said this content didn't do something with my heart, right? It did. And Stan, you're one of those. There's a lot of people not even here. We're all here.
I'm gonna run away.
But listen, this book, it's not here to just illuminate your mind. This book was written to stir our hearts. It illuminates the mind for sure. It gives us knowledge 100%. But it also stirs our heart. And so true love, it's brought up on a silver platter. Right? This is a meal. This is a course right here. And God presents true love to us as one of the best gifts that He has to offer. And I can personally attest that while marriage is not the end-all, be-all, for sure, but it is so good, right? I mean, if I could have been born married, I would have been, right? It's great. You'll love it, 100%, 10 out of 10. You'll love it. It's a worthy pursuit. Marriage is a worthy pursuit. It's an honorable pursuit, and it's something that we should hold up very high. It's something that we should speak about with great esteem. It's worthy, it's precious, it's great. And praise God for that. And so with that, with all these warnings, all these introductions, we can begin. Now you're ready. Now you're ready. So if you have your phones, we'll begin in chapter 1, verse 1. The book begins by giving us the title, The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So that's why people call it the Song of Songs, other people call it the Song of Solomon. Same thing, right? But back in the day, why is it called Song of Songs? Why is this called the Song of all songs? Because back in the day, right, in the Hebrew culture, if you really wanted to emphasize the importance of something, what would you do? You would repeat it twice, right? So you think of the heaven of heavens, the holy of holies, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, and now you have the Song of songs, right? Michael Bublé has nothing on this song. It's great. And She-Ran, too. He's pretty good, but not this good. This is a collection of the very best, the best that Solomon has to offer. And it's presented to you right here. So I promise you, right, if you come to this book with the right intentions, it will enrich your ability to love fully, to love passionately when that time comes in your life. And I'll let you in on a secret, right? As I was writing my vows, and then I decided to write out our own vows, we didn't just want it to be an impersonal repetition, right? That stuff is great too, but there's just something about writing out your own vows. And so as I was sitting there the week before our wedding, right, I was trying to write things down, and I realized, man, I'm not a poet. I can't rhyme. Like, I can't write. Like, what am I doing? And then I thought, let me see what Solomon had to say about the woman that he loved. And after I read through the Song of Solomon again, and then after that, the words just started writing themselves, right? And that's the thing about the Song of Solomon. It unlocks something within you that just, you get in touch with a side of yourself that you didn't even know you had. And so Solomon is writing. He's writing about the woman that he loves. Who is this woman? There seems to be a general consensus that she is a Shulamite maiden, and her name is, who knows? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We actually don't know her name at all because she's just referred to as the beloved, along with like a million other nicknames that he calls her. We don't know her real name. All right, and so that's something actually that you pick up as the book progresses. Right, you'll notice how they interact with each other. She never addresses him as Solomon either. And so they'll talk to each other with such gentleness, such carefulness. Right, and most of what they have to say builds each other up. It complements each other. Right, and this kind of speech, it's very exclusive to people who are in love. Right, a married man and a married woman, they don't talk to anyone the way that they talk to each other. It's unique. You have a special language. It's great. And the other thing about it is there's no shame in it also, right? There's no shame. Like, they're happy, they're proud that they have this privilege to talk to each other. Speaking of shame, right? You might be thinking to yourself, Song of Solomon? Are you kidding me? Is this the same Solomon that had like 700 wives and 300 concubines? And you expect us to sit at his feet? You ever think about that? Right? It's a little bit of an inconsistency. A little bit. And the unfortunate answer is yes. It's a very verified, justified concern. Solomon, there's no way around it. He failed, and he failed miserably, horrendously. And all we can do is learn a lesson from him, right? But at the same time, I think it's very important for you to understand that when this book was written, there's a general, a complete consensus that This was Solomon's first wife, right? This was Solomon's first love. So there are very, very compelling, strong arguments. We're not going to go through them, just because maybe we can cover them later, but this is the very first woman that he marries. But I think it's also important for us to know, right, that early on, when Solomon became king, there was a point where his heart turned over to pointless sexual pursuits. That's something that all of us know him for, unfortunately, and that overshadowed all the good that he ever did. And so eventually, right, he despised his own counsel. In Proverbs 5, maybe you remember, Solomon's writing to young men, potentially his young sons, right, and saying, be careful of the adulteress, right? Don't walk where she walks. Don't be around the areas that they typically hang around. She'll try to invite you. Her paths lead to death, right? I mean, Proverbs 5 has all that stuff, right? And you read that and you're thinking, Solomon, what happened there? And the lesson's clear here. You can start off having a terrific relationship, a marvelous marriage, but if you don't put every effort to protect it, it'll fall apart. As a matter of fact, the statistics say, I believe, that most marriages, there's something like 70% of marriages, if they are to end in divorce, it will only be after year 8 or in year 8, right? So it takes time for a relationship to break down. And again, we'll get into all of those things, and it'll be great, it'll be helpful. And so this kind of perseverance, this kind of carefulness takes a lot of wisdom, takes a lot of willingness. And so what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to have good general insight, good decision-making, good judgment, right? It means to know what to say and when not to say something. And it means you have a willingness to be sacrificial, to think of someone that is not you. And so this goes for the ladies too, right? There are traits that people can smell on each other. A million miles away, you can just see them. These kinds of people stand out, right? These are attractive traits, and wisdom is one of these traits. Attraction. What is attraction? Right, so again, if you had to explain attraction, if you had to define it for me, what would you say? What is attraction? And then what is it? How does it work? Right? Like, I know most of the guys are probably trying to figure that out. Like, how does attraction work? How do you do this thing? The guys are wondering, how do I carry myself in such a way where I come off as intriguing and respectable, right? I'm not a joke. I might be funny, but my life is not a joke. And the ladies, you're probably wondering, how do I get noticed? For the right reasons, right? Not for the wrong reasons, not for the things that I wear. How do I get noticed as a person, as a soul, as a human being? What does it take? What does it take to be attractive? And so there is a process to the art of attraction. It's been around for a long time, and it's a skill and it's an art, and it can be honed in, it can be fine-tuned, right? It's like playing a violin, right? If you want to get someone's attention, you have to hit the right notes at the right time. They're not just general points. There's a lot at play here. And so attraction, first of all, let's say this, attraction has to be the first step to into the world of romance, right? Attraction, it starts with attraction. It does. There's just no way around it. Right, and here's the kicker, it has to be reciprocal. Which that's hard, right? Not only do you have to like her, she also has to like you back. So it can't be one-sided, it has to be a mutual attraction. And whether it's there or not, you'll figure that out pretty quickly. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do to sway her. There's some wiggle room, and we'll get there. But you shouldn't date someone. You shouldn't date someone if you're not attracted to them, or maybe ladies, that's to you. You shouldn't date someone just because it makes sense on paper, you know? You shouldn't date him or her just because they come from a respectable family, they have a lot of money, or even because you know they're godly and you see them with their Bible. Even if they seem like they have their life figured out, they're going places, you shouldn't date them for that reason. And you definitely shouldn't date him just because, he asked and nobody else did. That's not a reason. And so to put it simply, right, if there is no mutual attraction, there can be no future. So obviously, attraction's a big deal. I know none of this is news to you, and it wasn't news to me. That's why when I was single, I wanted to figure out what attraction is, right? Like the intricacies of it, right? Like, let's take this thing apart, right? Let's figure it out. And so throughout my single years, I asked a lot of people, like, help me understand this mysterious language of attraction. Like, explain it to me, right? I had a lot of people. And growing up, I had a lot of sisters, I had a lot of cousins, close cousins, girls. In our friend circles, we had some, girls as well. So I was unashamed. Like, I wanted to understand, right? Like, help me understand what this is, right? Because sometimes it felt like there's a textbook that everybody got, but mine got lost in the mail, right? Did you ever feel that way? Yeah. Right, so what is it? How does it work? What are the intricacies of it? And so I have a collective definition that I was able to come up with, right? And so this is from a lot of years, all female perspective. Take some notes here, guys. Here's what they said. Pretty much it was almost identical. Stan, you can back me up on this. They said it's not necessarily what you look like as much as it is who you are as a person. But it's also about what you look like. And it's not necessarily what you say as much as it is the way you say it. But it also matters what you say. Don't forget that. But most importantly, it's not about how much money you make. Don't worry, guys. It's not. As much as it is about how real you are and how you treat other people. But it also matters how much money you make. So if you got nothing from that, man, me too. I was left alone. We're all on the same boat. So what I realized through all these questions and answers is that guys have no idea what attraction is, but girls don't either, right? We're all on the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all clueless to this recipe of attraction. Look, and the truth is there is some mystery to attraction. There is. Right? I think we've all known wonderful, godly, attractive, successful Christians who seemingly were a perfect match. Or we've all probably played the matchmaker where we try to intertwine two destinies. In our minds, it makes perfect sense. But they come together and they just don't have it, the spark. It just doesn't happen for them. Right? And you know what? That's okay. The secret things, they belong with the Lord. That's all right. Attraction, it always comes in the flash of a moment. It's like a spark, right? It's not something that you build over time. Typically, that can't happen. It happens usually in an instant, right? Either it's there or it's not. And so maybe you've heard this as well, right? A lot of people say it's hard to get married to someone from like a small town, right? It's hard to get married to someone that you grew up with, right? Obviously unrelated to you, like a small you, things like that. Typically those people will marry out of state because they grew up with these people and they almost see each other as brothers and sisters, right? And so it's hard to sometimes undo it, though that again, it's not a law, it can happen. But typically, if you're in a tight-knit community, smaller community, that can be hard to undo. Anyway, we'll come back to our text, verse 2. The woman will begin to speak, and from here on out, she will do most of the talking. Unsurprising. Does that cost a line? I had my wife filter some of these jokes, guys, I promise. So you can take it up with her. Okay. Verse 2. Let's start off slow. May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. We're jumping right in, guys. For your love is better than wine. Your oils have a pleasing fragrance. Your name is like a purified oil. Therefore, the maidens love you. Verse 4. Draw me after you. Let us run together. Let's get out of here. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will rejoice in you and be glad. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. Whew! All right, this girl. Do you think she likes this guy? I think she does. She wants to be around him, with him, all the above, right? This girl has eyes, hard eyes, for this guy. And so lesson number one that we can definitely, vividly see here in these first few verses. Gentlemen, you have to eliminate the ick factor. And I've just been introduced to this by Tim and some of the other Willie as well. We have a Bible study and they introduced me to the ick factor, right? So I know exactly what it means, but it's hard to explain. But I have a feeling you guys all know what it is. Right, basically though, when a girl looks at you, she shouldn't feel nauseated. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But look, when she is listing the reasons that she likes this guy, when she's listing the reasons that she's enchanted with this guy, what do you notice? She starts by commenting on his physical traits, right? That's where it begins. It begins with the physical. She seems to like his lips, right? So guys, keep those chapped, right? Also, onion breath is a no-go. Lay's sour cream and onion chips are my favorite, but I quickly learned they can no longer be my favorite. Keep it fresh. Keep it fresh. Then she says, your oils have a pleasing fragrance, right? This guy smells good. There's something about a guy that smells good. Is that weird to say? There it is. There's something about a fresh guy. So man, maybe it's time to graduate from PAX. Sorry man, I know the other stuff is expensive, but it's worth it. It doesn't last as long too, but you gotta do it. The girls, they notice these little things, right? Is your hair combed? Do your shoes match your belt? Are the lenses on your glasses clean? Are your fingernails, and please, your toenails, are they clipped? Are they clean? Right? She's picking up on the smallest details, his lips, right? Like man, like she's looking at the things that we would not look at. And so look, not only is the desire of her heart to be with this guy, there's a general consensus that this is a good man, right? She says, rightly do the maidens love you. And so she moves from his physical traits, his physical attributes, and then she starts moving to his characteristics. Verse 3, she says, his name is like a purified oil. Like a purified oil, right? Cleanliness and purity not only describe his outward appearance, but also the inward position of his heart. His life is in order. Nothing about him is nasty or filthy, inside or out. His public conduct, right, the way he carries himself, his speech, the words that he uses, his spiritual life, all of it is neat, orderly. It's been attended to. Right? So there's structure to this guy. This guy has plans for the future. He's going places. He's not stuck in a rut. Now look, kings, and you are that, right? You're kings. I know some of you may be convinced that you're genetically disadvantaged. I get it. I find myself there as well. But you've convinced yourself that there's nothing that you can do to make yourself more attractive right now. I think that's what it said. You just got beat up by the ugly stick. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think we are wrong, right? Because as we look at this guy, right, it's not just about the physical traits, right? There's a lot to say about the things that we can do, right? So we can be presentable. We can be respectable. We can be distinctive. We can be determined, right? It's not all about your genetics. A lot of times it's about the way you carry yourself, the aroma that you bring into a room. Everybody knows the nice guy, right? When there's an hour of need, everybody knows the guy that they can rely on, the guy that will come through. Wives need a husband that can come through. Right? So again, it can be as simple as trading out some of those physical traits as well, right? So if you can have the characteristics and the physical traits, like man, you're going places, you're on the right path. Right? So maybe if you just make some small adjustments, those sweatpants for some khakis, for example, right? Sweatpants are fine, gym shorts are great, I love them myself, but maybe not in a public formal setting, right? The very first thing people notice about you is your shoes. Is that true? I have no idea. I thought I heard that somewhere. It might be true, it might not be. I don't know, right? But just in case it is, right? Go to Aldo and get yourself some nice leather shoes, whatever. Just get yourself some shoes, man. Another thing, right? can't have attraction without considering reputation, right? Reputation is huge. The most beautiful people in this world can be deemed untouchable because of their reputation. Nobody wants a reclamation project. People want a relationship, a marriage, right? So you can be a stud, right? Or you can just be gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. But again, if you're a project, if there's so much about you that is incomplete, people don't want it. You know what I'm saying? When somebody hears your name, right? When I say your name, I'm not going to say anyone's name, don't worry, but when you think of a name, automatically something pops into their mind. What is it about your name? What is it? What do they think of, right? We live in a tight community, that's all it is. We know each other very well, right? And so take advantage of that, right? If you're starting to date someone from here, locally, that's great, right? If you're starting to have a relationship that's maybe going places and starting to bud, listen, ask your close friends. Ask your reliable, trustworthy friends, right? What do you think about this person? What would they have to say? Is this a good thing? Would the maidens approve? Would they approve of this guy? Would they approve of this girl? All right, and so this is a segment for the girls now. When it comes to attraction, yeah, let's just start here. I don't know how to make a smooth segue, but we know that attraction is a big part. We know that it plays a big role in the early stages of marriage for sure. It's critical, right? Now, ladies, there will come a moment in time when you will be amused with the guy, right? You'll be enamored. You won't know him deeply yet, but that initial attraction, that interest will be there. And listen, I know they're gross right now, but trust me, one day you'll get there. And you'll wake up and you'll see them in a whole new light. You'll be there. You'll be attracted. And so there will be a moment when you become maybe not infatuated, but you'll be open to exploring something more than a friendship. Let's put it that way. And so you'll be looking at this guy from the sidelines, from the side, right? There he is, moving around, doing his thing. You'll be looking at him and can I change anything? You'll be looking at him, right? You'll notice his every move. And the thing is, he'll have no idea you exist, right? Happens all the time. And so I want to help you with this, but really I'm trying to help the guys. And we're helping each other, so check this out. So you'll just sit there, right, and you'll just wish that he would just come sweep you off your feet already. Like, what is he waiting for? Right? But here's the thing, that moment may never come. Honestly, it may never come if the right opportunity does not present itself. And so listen, I know that all of us have this perfect storybook, love story in our minds, right? Many of you might be just sitting there waiting for the stars to align, right? He's the man, he's got to do this. And that's true, he does. But you're just waiting to finally have this illustration, this dream that you have had since you were a little girl come to fruition, right? You expect him to come up on a big white horse as the prince that he is and just ride away with you into the sunset. But that's not always how these things work. I hate to break it to you, right? But not always. Sometimes, not always. And that's okay. Sometimes the guys, we need a little help, right? So I want you to be very careful. I want to be very careful when I say this, right? I don't want to give the guys an excuse, but maybe I'll start with this. Part of being a man is to put yourself out. Part of being a man is to initiate. Part of being a man means to take a risk, knowing full well you might get shut down, knowing full well it might not work out. That might happen. It might happen. But you're a man and you can take it. And so ladies, back to you, right? A word of advice. If you like a guy, if you're intrigued by a certain guy, I just want you to know that if you want to get to know this guy, if you want to be noticed by this particular guy, not just some guy, you have one guy in mind, ladies, make yourself noticeable, right? Come out from under the rock a little bit. Come out from under these tight cliques that you have. That's great. But give him a chance to cross paths with you, right? Give the guy a chance to cross paths with you when you don't have like 10 other girls surrounding you, right? that can be intimidating, right? Not all guys have just that kind of confidence, right? That's rare. Some do, but it's rare. And so just make it a little bit easier on him, right? Put yourself in a situation where the stakes are a little bit lower, right? Where there's no pressure, where it's easier to strike up a conversation, right? And actually, one of the easiest places to do this is ministry, right? Any kind of, right, sing together, whatever, feed my starving children, anything, right? It gives you an excuse just to chit-chat. That's a great place to do it. But it can be challenging for a guy to put himself out there because men, it's very difficult for us to get shut down and rejected, right? It will happen, it does happen, but we're very prideful creatures, and we hate being shut down. And so let me give you, maybe a practical example, right? If you're all sitting here, right, maybe try to sit over there where he sits. Right? And just play the naive card, right? Like, oh, you go to this youth too? Oh, you sit here? How long have you been sitting here? Just naive, right? Like, it's okay. Like, oh, I didn't realize. Like, you can do that, and you can get away with it. Like, nobody will question you. Nobody will second guess it at all. I'm telling you, if he shares any amount of interest, he'll jump at that opportunity, right? Even if he doesn't like you the way you like him, if he has like an interest about who you are, if he wants to get to know you, he'll jump at that opportunity, right? Men are instinctual like that. They will. They know what they're doing. Just give him the chance. And so let me maybe condense all of what I said into this statement. Let the men be men, but give them the honor of initiating, but also give them the opportunity to do so. Let me say it again. Let the men be men. Give them the honor of initiating, but also give them the opportunity to do so. Right? You're just making their jobs easier. They're still initiating. They'll still pursue you, but you're making yourself available, right? Within arm's reach. Be very naive about it, right? Don't be direct, don't be straightforward. But I think you know what I mean. All right, we come to verse 5. So now we're going to look at this girl, this woman. Verse 5, she says, I am black but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem. Do not stare at me because I am swarthy. For the sun has burned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretaker of the vineyards. She's saying, look, I didn't get the luxury of being daddy's spoiled little girl. I had to roll up my sleeves and I needed to go out there and make a living. I had to work. I wasn't spoiled. And therefore I'm sunburnt. Therefore I have blisters on my hands. I'm a working woman. Right? And that did not match the beauty standards of that time. But she did it anyway. And he fell in love with her anyway. And so she's aware. She's aware of the way that she looks. She's aware that she doesn't necessarily match these beauty standards. But look at what Solomon tells her, right? A lot of times you girls are like overthinking this whole physical side of things because look, she hates herself. Look what Solomon sees in her. Verse 8, if you yourself do not know, most beautiful among women, tell to me, my darling, to me, you are like the mare among the chariots. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of beads. We will make for you ornaments of gold with beads of silver. Right? So first of all, it's clear that she didn't abandon her physical appearance. Right? Like she took care of herself. But as a result of being a hardworking woman, it took a toll on her body. She didn't like forget about her femininity, right? She's still a woman. She's embracing that. But catch what he's saying. He's saying, you may not know this, but to me, in my eyes, you are altogether beautiful. There is no blemish in you whatsoever, right? He'll say that later in chapter 4, but basically the same thing. So here's the thing about beauty standards. We find certain characteristics, both the guys and the girls, we find them to be attractive because we're told to think they are attractive, right? You didn't set your own beauty standard. The culture set it for you. Right? So these standards, they do change over time. And it's important that you're aware of this because it matters who you're being influenced by, Who's setting these standards for you? Because this becomes a huge problem for men when their standards become informed by unrealistic, pornographic images. That's an issue. That's a problem. I read a study. There was this woman, man, I might have told the story, but it's okay. There was a woman who, she worked in the adult film industry, let's say, and she was married to a man, and then she had left that industry, and she was just talking about how destructive it was, and she was saying, as I was working in that industry, right, quote unquote, she is the ideal, the ideal, the best of the best in terms of beauty standards of that time. And she's saying, all the while, in my marriage, my husband was still addicted to pornography, still, right? So the problem is that these standards, they're unrealistic. And it will never be enough, right? If you fuse your mind with these things, nobody will ever be enough. The issue won't be her. It doesn't matter if she changes anything about herself. The issue is your mind. And so you need to start undoing that damage if you've done damage now. Because that stuff is poison. It will poison your marriage before it even begins. And so for the girls, this can also be problematic because of the high standard that you set for yourself, right? A lot of women, right, they follow these influencers, as we call them, right? So they look at people like Kim K, Kylie Jenner, Lizzo, and they set them as the beauty standards. I just found out who she is. I had to. Unrealistic expectations. And I'll say it's much easier on the guys, right? Basically, if you have broad shoulders and you're just a little bit taller, you're good, right? And if you can look like Stan, man.
You said.
I do want to clarify if I have any guests, Stan is off the mark. But the standards are so much more demanding for the girls, and it's hard. Right? And so it's worth saying that physical attraction, it's a thing that needs to be present. It's very important, but you cannot build a marriage on physical attraction, right? This is just the spark. This is just the beginning, attraction. The thing that will fuel the fire is something else entirely, and we'll get into that in the following weeks. But you do need attraction to start this beautiful process. And so again, right, despite the harsh cultural standards and the demands, right, listen to how these lovebirds talk about one another. Listen to how they talk to each other. We'll take he will take it from verse 15. He says, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like doves. How handsome you are, my beloved, and so pleasant," she's saying this. "Indeed, our couch is luxuriant. The beams of our houses are cedars, our rafters are cypresses." And so, a lot of maybe outdated terminology here, right? What are they saying here? She's saying that as I look forward to the life that we hope to build together, I have a sense of security. I feel safe with you. Everything about this process feels right. Right? She says, we have the roots, the foundation that we have built, the roots of this relationship. They're built on more than just beauty standards, more than just physical attributes, more than just physical attraction. See, she says these huge trees, right? They represent the core foundations on which protect the marriage, right? She says these trees protect them as they're sitting on this couch. They tower over us and they protect us. They watch over us. Right? The cedar tree, it's known for its sturdiness. It's huge. It does not easily rot. And the cypress tree, it's known for its longevity, right? Some of them last as long as 1,200 years, but 600 years for sure, right? They last. It's safe. And so we're coming to a close. Worship team, you can come on up. I just want to say this, right? This is the kind of love that you want to wait for. Not that crap that you see in rom-coms and wherever else. That is not what you want. want. This is what you want. A kind of love that is rooted in faithfulness. A kind of love that intertwines the two souls. Two become one. Wait for the kind of love that makes you want to sing. It's joyful. It's great. And so if you already have this kind of romantic love, or you're building up to it, right? When we sing with thankfulness. And if this is something you are actively pursuing, sing with anticipation. And if you're waiting, sing with hopefulness. Because we know that God loves to give us good gifts, and marriage and romance is one of those gifts. Let's start singing.